Hi, have you ever written a letter to someone famous? We used to call them fan letters, but I don't know how many people are writing letters anymore. I'm going to show you two real letters written to a president of the United States. One from a gentleman in Wisconsin, and the other one from a little girl in Tennessee. One goes through a chain of command with some higher ups in the White House, and the other one gets a sweet little response. They're both about the same subject, UFOs. Let's go back to 1969, when an American citizen did something a little daring back then. He wrote his congressman a letter demanding answers from President Nixon about UFOs. Richard Nixon was the 37th president from 1969 to 1974, when he stepped down due to the Watergate scandal. The letter was written by Raymond Conley from Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and it represents the frustration Americans had wanting to know the truth about UFOs, and that frustration has only intensified. On April 15th, 1969, this is 3 months before Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin walked on the moon. If you believe that happened, some people don't believe it. Raymond G. Conley wrote to Henry S. Royce in Washington, D.C. Representative Royce was a Democrat serving from 1955 to 1983. And you can see that Conley's letter was received in Washington, D.C. 2 days later on April 17th. Dear Congressman Royce, would you please try to get the answers to the following questions for me? Number 1. Who were the civilian scientists that worked for and with projects Sign, Grudge, and Blue Book before the Condon Committee? And then there's a sub one. What were their respective fields? 2. How much were they paid of the $500 million spent? 3. What were their findings? Number 2. Where does President Richard M. Nixon personally stand on the UFOs flying saucer issue? His own views, not someone else's. Number 3. In the event UFOs prove to be extraterrestrial spaceships with living intelligent beings on board from some other planets in our galaxy, will President Richard M. Nixon tell the public this officially? Yes or no, Mr. President? I hope to hear from you very soon, sir. Sincerely, Raymond G. Conley. And then in the bottom left-hand corner, you can see there's a PS. We can't read the whole thing because the paper is flipped over. I think it says PS. I call President Nixon some kind of coward on the issue. Royce then forwards Conley's letter to William E. Timmons, the Deputy Assistant to President Nixon. And Timmons writes back to Royce on May 7th, 1969. Royce received it in D.C. a day later, May 8th. And Timmons writes, Dear Mr. Royce, thank you for forwarding Mr. Raymond G. Conley's letter requesting the President's views on the investigation of unidentified flying objects. As you no doubt are aware, the Department of the Air Force was authorized to conduct a thorough examination of UFO sightings so that your constituent will have all the details. I'm asking that department to provide their information substantiating the theory that UFOs are phenomena resultant from our environment. Sincerely, William E. Timmons, Deputy Assistant to the President. Now, there was a blind carbon copy sent to Secretary Siemens. Who is Siemens? He is Secretary Robert Siemens. He was the Secretary of the Air Force from 1969 to 1973, serving under President Richard Nixon. And interestingly enough, Siemens was involved in the development of modernizing Air Force technology. Then Helen Cole, who was in the appointments office, sends Conley's letter to Bill Gully, and she writes, this guy wants to discuss flying saucers. Can this go to Defense for handling? Bill Gully was the administrative assistant to the Armed Forces aide to President Nixon. He had a few positions, finally becoming the first civilian director of the White House Military Office in 1976. Then Gully sends Copley's letter to John Brown. John Brown was the White House Special Assistant on staff for H.R. Haldeman from 1968 to 1971. Haldeman was chief of staff for Nixon, and he was embroiled in Watergate. In fact, he went to jail for 18 months. During this letter, the Watergate hadn't happened yet. But someone crosses out John Brown's name and writes Noble. Noble Mellencamp was Nixon's chief executive clerk for 2 years, and then he worked with Amy Walter Stossel in the Soviet Union. Bill Gully writes, I can understand Helen Cole sending this to us as the Air Force is concerned with this subject. However, before it can be answered, I think someone should determine if the president actually did write to this guy. Did Nixon reply to Conley? I don't know. I haven't come across that letter. But he did respond to little Melissa in Tennessee. This letter was received December 23, 1971. Dear Mr. Nixon, I'm writing to tell you about my idea on flying saucers. You know that when you shine a searchlight that it shines far. Well, maybe when it shines into the sky, it passes into space. And when it reaches its destiny, it changes into a form and comes back down to Earth, and we think it is a flying saucer. Thank you for listening. Melissa Reynolds, age 12, from Martin, Tennessee. What an interesting thought, an interesting idea. And this little girl spends her time thinking about what is a UFO. And then she comes up with this very creative, almost quantum physics-like answer, and just wants to share it with the president. Does the president respond? Yes. Dear Melissa, no matter how busy the day is, I always enjoy hearing from young friends. The adventures you describe remind me of the joy and opportunity of life in America, if we only take the time to find it. With my gratitude for your kindness in writing and with my best wishes to you for the years ahead, sincerely, Richard Nixon. And enclosed is a children's booklet. I tried to find what that children's booklet would be, but I couldn't. Did you know President Nixon and the comedian Jackie Gleason were friends and golf buddies? Here is a picture of them golfing together in 1973 in Florida. Jackie Gleason was a comedian and an actor. He was in The Honeymooners in the 1950s. He was in the movie The Hustler with Paul Newman in 1961, and he was the sheriff in Smokey and the Bandit in 1977. Jackie Gleason claims that Nixon took him to Homestead Air Force Base in 1973 and showed him 4 alien bodies. And Jackie Gleason was never the same after that. It shook him up. It's been over 50 years since these letters. And do we know much more than we did back then? No. A little 12-year-old girl was so interested in getting the answers that she offered her own theory as to what could possibly be going on. 50 years later, we still don't know what's going on when it comes to the truth about UFOs. If you write to the president and get a response, please let me know.